Talk Real Estate with Fred Johnson. With over 30 years of professional experience serving Central Oregon, Fred Johnson can help guide you through the Central Oregon real estate landscape. Call in at 541-388-1110. Talk Real Estate with Fred Johnson is brought to you in part by the Central Oregon Association of Realtors, Evergreen Home Loans, Abijay Automated Control Systems, and Duke Warner Realty. The phone number again is 541-388-1110. Now, Talk Real Estate, only on FM News 100.1 and News Talk 1110 KBND.
Hello, Central Oregon, and welcome to Talk Real Estate with Fred Johnson. I'm excited to be here in the studio today. We have James Gentis with us today. We've been waiting to visit with him for a couple of weeks. He's the co-founder of BEND Tech, and we'll be able to get into that a little bit as time goes on and discuss some of the exciting and really innovative things that are happening here in Bend. James, is your microphone working over there?
Let's see. Does that work?
Oh, that's beautiful. Excellent. You've really got a radio voice. Has anybody told you that before?
Hey, it could be a new line of work for me.
Well, I know that you're a creative guy and you're pretty innovative, so maybe there's going to be something in the future. Hopefully, you'll come back and visit us more than one time.
I hope so too.
So, just a couple of things off of the top of the hour here is for those of you that have not been out to the Deschutes County Fair yet, get out to the Deschutes County Fair. I realize it's pretty hot, but in the evenings, it's been great. Last evening, they had the band America. Now, many of you that are listening are probably fairly young. I don't know, James, do you know of any of the songs from America, like Ventura Highway or Horse with No Name or some of those?
I think I'd recognize them if I heard them.
Well, it was pretty fun last evening. The young kids were just kind of like looking at one another, and then, of course, the people with gray hair were singing absolutely every lyric that was going on. Tonight they have Joe Nichols, which is sponsored by us here at Combined Communication and the Bull 99.7 right here at our own station. So if you're a country enthusiast, you can get out there and do that. And then, of course, tomorrow morning is the all-famous Buckaroo Breakfast, and that's one not to be missed if you like pan bread and more bacon and eggs and that sort of thing than you would want to eat. They got a little country band that plays out there. It's really, really fun, and I don't know, they've been doing it for 30 years or something. It's pretty cool. Last week, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, we had Amy Warren from Core Community Land Trust that was in, and I just wanted to thank everybody that has participated or sent me an email. Again, my email is fred@dukewarner.com. If you have any questions about the land trust and how to get that, for those of you that are listening may recall that she's working with a group, Core Community Land Trust, that is trying to address the affordable housing needs here in Bend. And one of the things that James and I are going to talk about is that there's just an absolute number of issues that all seem to be coming together at one time, and that it starts with. I just got an article here recently, as a matter of fact, about the grain of America and the grain of Bend, Oregon, and one of the things that's happening is it seems to be getting increasingly more difficult for those young people that are between 19 and 34 years of age to be able to find rental properties, to be able to sustain themselves based on their service-related jobs that we have here in the area. And, as we get to talking with James about what they're doing and some of the innovative things that are forthcoming, as Bend makes that transition from being a sawmill town that has since become a tourist town and a building town, it seems that things are very, very active in Bend when the economy is active and the tourist market is active. That's the same time that we're building houses. And then for whatever reason, as it cycles through and people don't have the disposable income to recreate or vacation, or we have low snow years or whatever they may be, we feel that instantly in our community, where with a little bit of diversity and more businesses and more diverse businesses, and quite honestly, a number of businesses that create and derive their income from outside of the area but create the employment in the area, will really be beneficial to Bend in the long run. So it's great to have those groups like Amy Warren out there trying to do that. Of course, the other issue that's been a very hot and sodded topic here in Bend is the Oregon State location of their campus and the building there. I was informed this week that the Truth and Sight group, those are the people that are opposed to the current location, they've been doing a survey online, and they've had 900 respondents from here in Bend that have responded to that site. And then, of course, in today's bulletin, there was an article about all of the reasons why and the benefits why that having a four-year university here in our town would be a wonderful thing to do. So that's really what I have at the top of the area. So let's talk just a little bit with James and kind of get an idea of how he found his way to Bend and what Bend Tech is all about. Bend Tech is I guess the easiest way is, James, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you found your way here to Bend, and
Sure.
Talk about maybe some of the entrepreneurial hotspots in the country and how that has come to light here in Bend.
Yeah, well, I guess speaking of entrepreneurial hotspots, I moved here from the Bay Area, where I met my wife, although she grew up here, so I at least have a strong tie to the local community. And since we moved here 6 years ago, I've been very motivated to try to become part of the tech community.
Uh-huh.
And that's relatively sparse here in Bend, or at least folks oftentimes will work from home, and so finding them is difficult. And what we wanted to do was to try to create a space where people who were either telecommuting or had their own tech businesses could work together and collaborate and network with people who are in their own industry. And to do that, we thought that a co-working space would be the best way to facilitate that type of interaction. And that's pretty consistent with what you see all over the country, is co-working spaces becoming a hot spot for people to work together and ideally build businesses together. So it provides kind of a stepping stone for a company who wants to begin with a desk with one person and hopefully grow and then rent a small office. And as they expand, they can get into a medium office and then a large office. And if they're really successful, then they move out.
Perfect. They get to and one of the things that James is going to share with us today is there's sort of a new vocabulary established with this new entrepreneurial mindset, and that is so that the hope is that they would get to a point where they would have a scalable business, which would be the time that they would be moving out. Is that correct?
That's right. As you said, we're trying to focus on what some call traded sector businesses, or basically transitioning our economy from one where we have businesses that are grown who sell their products locally to businesses that are highly scalable, where they are selling their products in a global marketplace and they can be built with relatively low capital. And software types of businesses fit that model really well. Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Yes. According to, my entrepreneurial hotspots around the country, apparently there's a number of areas like in Las Vegas or Boulder, Colorado, or Salt Lake City. That's correct. But as your program is starting to move forward, you're starting to get some national recognition from some of those larger market areas that are coming to look at some of the things you're doing a very good job with. Is that?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the credit goes to EDCO, Economic Development for Central Oregon, and Roger Lee's group. Entrepreneur Magazine named Bend the #1 entrepreneurial city in America. And so that was a pretty strong credit, and I think the motivation they had was that you can build a business anywhere. And what many startup founders struggle with is the work-life balance. And by building a company in Bend, you can both have the company that you want and also have the quality of life you want. And that's really uncommon.
That's great, and we're really just happy to have you here. We look forward to it. After the break, when we come back, we'll be able to visit with James Gentis from Bend Tech just a little bit more, and we'll find out really what they're doing, how they came into being, what it all looks like. There's just a number of really exciting things that are happening, and what that's going to do is help our community here in Bend. You can always call us at the station, 541-388-1110. And, of course, you can always contact me direct on my email, which is fred@dukewarner.com. After the break, we'll come back and we'll visit with James and talk with that a little bit more. Hello, welcome back to Talk Real Estate. I'm your host, Fred Johnson. And we're here today. We have James Gentis in the office. And James Gentis is with BenTech. He's also the Vice President of the Tech Alliance and also the CEO of StartupCommunity.org. And James, welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
And what I'd like to do, if we could, is maybe sort of start with, a little bit of the background, sort of the culture of tech people, if you will, and maybe a little bit of background. Basically, you're trying to establish a program where like-minded people can come together and collaborate and work. So maybe you could explain to us how the BenTech facility came about and what that looks like a little bit.
Sure. We had, for about the past 5 years, a co-working space in 2 other locations. The first was the old cigar building, many people might recognize. It's just across from the Blacksmith restaurant. And
Sure.
We outgrew that after a couple of years and moved into a building on Greenwood, which was called the Eagle Building.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was we were able to prove out the business concept so that a commercial property owner was willing to take the risk of building out a space dedicated for co-working. And that as a nonprofit organization, the Tech Alliance wasn't necessarily committed to the same type of lease agreement that a business might otherwise be committed to. So we were able to take the community that we had built over the past number of years and transition that into a space that when people come from Portland and they come from Seattle and San Francisco and Southern California, they have an expectation of the quality of a co-working space because
Mm-hmm.
they've probably seen them where they're coming from companies that have a lot of amenities. And so we wanted to provide that level of expectation to them when they came to Bend. And so this new space has a lot of those amenities. It's got showers, it's got a cafe with a full bar, it's got access to the river trail, it's access to the old mill, and it looks great. It's got this kind of modern industrial look, nice architecture, a lot of outdoor seating. So it's what people expect. We have stand-up desks.
Mm-hmm.
We have lots of different options for folks, and it's tied into a lot of events that we have for networking opportunities with other tech people. And we have an accelerator program and other startups and businesses that are in the same building. So it kind of delivers on everything that we think people are looking for when they move to Bend and they want somewhere to work that's not in their home.
Sure. Well, that sounds great. And for, those of us that have, been here in Bend for a long time and still remember, Bend as a sawmill town, it's really interesting and innovative that so many people in this technology mindset would want to come and have sort of a collaborative deal. And one of your functions are meetups. Is that a term that you currently
Yes.
use? and maybe you could explain to our listeners today, sort of what a meetup is, and maybe that'll kind of give them an idea of how this collaboration works with, really a collection of individuals with their individual computers, but yet they have the ability to work together.
That's right. So Meetup is kind of like the Kleenex is to tissue type of relationship. So meetup.com is the actual site, and it provides a way for people who share a common interest to get together. And those are volunteer individuals who lead those meetup groups. And so, for example, we have a web design and development meetup. and we have a web marketing meetup, and they meet once or twice a month, and we provide them with the space at our co-working facilities to host those meetups. And they primarily are used to educate people in the community in addition to networking. So there'll always be a topic that they're focused on, let's say the latest version of WordPress that has some new features, and they want to educate other people in the community about it, or SEO or other technologies. And so it's a great way for people who are looking for work to find work, as well as just meet other people in the community.
Well, and that's really interesting. You just brought up a thought to me, James, and there's a number of these because of the individual nature of the tech community, if you will. There's a lot of these companies that are here in Central Oregon that a lot of us have absolutely no idea that they're here, and they're scalable, they're sizable, they're doing some pretty remarkable things. I was just recently informed that a term that is used quite a bit now, SEO or search engine optimization, was actually founded here in the Bend community.
That's right, John Audette.
And it's so remarkable. And then another one, I had a recent experience where maybe you could talk a little bit about, and this is another term for everybody, your clusters. Clusters are sort of the grouping of the individual entities that work or collaborate together. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, they're industry clusters.
Industry. Yep.
And that's one of the unique things that we do here in Central Oregon that many other cities find very attractive. They come here and they say, wow, you guys really seem to be working well together, much more so than they are themselves in places like Portland or in Spokane, Washington, because we have organized around industry clusters. So, for example, I'm part of the tech cluster, and then there's an outdoor cluster with products that are human-powered, and snowboards, things like that. And then there are a bioscience cluster, and we have a cluster around robotics and UAV technology. There's a food and beverage cluster. So the reason behind
drones too. Drones are another issue here in Central Oregon, aren't they? Drones and recreation.
Yeah, SOAR Oregon just received $3 million, and they're basically funded to promote and support the drone industry here in Oregon. So each one of these industries essentially needs its own ecosystem. And what I mean by ecosystem is that if you have an idea for a business, and let's say that idea is some type of product that helps put stents in hearts, then that would require someone who has experience that could help you in that particular industry. So you need venture capital from investors who might have invested in companies in that industry, and you want to talk to mentors who have maybe built companies in that industry. And so an ecosystem is a group of investors, advisors, other founders that can help you get your idea into a more focused format to build a business around, and then ideally raise capital and scale it.
Oh, that's absolutely fascinating. Today we have James Gentis with Bentech in here visiting with us and sharing some of the innovative things that are on the horizon for, if you will, some diversification of our job market here in Central Oregon. And when we come back after the break, we'll be able to go in maybe a little bit deeper into some of the different businesses that have been here, some of the successes that they've had, some legislation that is on the horizon that is making it maybe a little bit easier for that entrepreneurial spirit, and then getting back to the real estate component, what the people look like that are intrigued by Bentech and coming in as individuals, and or the possibility of scalable businesses relocating to the area and having some impact on our community. It's a really innovative time, and I'm also going to do a little shout out here too to some of those businesses. Hello, Central Oregon, and welcome back. You're with Talk Real Estate. I'm Fred Johnson. I'm your host. Today in the studio we have James Gentis. James Gentis is with Ben Tech. And your mic's still working over there, James?
I think so.
Nice. There you go. Yep, the needles are bouncing. You're with us today. So James has been sharing with us how our economy here in Bend is taking shape and how it's changing a little bit, and what role and really what a valuable role Ben Tech and the ability and having a facility where some of these like-minded entrepreneurs, tech people can gather, meet, and share ideas and really create not only short-term employment, but create long-term employment in our area. And as an observer that has visited the facility a couple of times, and again to sort of reiterate, people can come in, they can meet in the coffee shop and meet with other people. They can rent a small desk space. They can create a little bit more and have a little bit more desk space, maybe a conference room and that. And as their business grows, their need and participation within Ben Tech can change a little bit before they actually go out on their own. And I believe, James, isn't it true that there's been some other entities that have sort of moved into your neighborhood a little bit? Is that correct?
Yeah, the building itself is about 26,000 square feet. Our space is 7,000 of that. So the remainder is made up of other companies, including 5 Talent, which is a web development shop, as well as Collective, which is a company who just moved up from the Bay Area. They have over 20 employees. And that brings a lot of value to our community because they're buying homes and their spouses are finding work, and they're hopefully going to create even more jobs here.
And they have moved here? They've committed to moving here?
They're here.
They're here.
Yep.
Oh, wow. That's good to know. So, one of the things, too, that you shared with me during the break, and I certainly want to make certain that I get this out, is one of the things that you're trying to put together is 50 startups, I believe you call it. 50.
That's right.
And we're getting pretty close.
Yes.
But
that's on our blog. So bentech.com is our news tech blog, and we have a program running for almost a year now to identify a startup every week. And the reason was because if you asked anyone how many startups are in Bend, no one would tell you 50. And so our goal was to try to prove that there are 50 companies here. And so if anyone has a tech company, they should reach out to us because we'd love to include them in that list. Yeah, I think we have 40 now.
And they would do that by contacting Kelly, is that correct?
That's right. Kelly Kearsley is our editor.
And she's at kelly@bentech.com, is that right?
That's right.
Perfect. And then why don't we discuss Tierney as well here, because just in the event someone is interested in your space or has any questions or any of that sort of thing, Tierney O'Day.
That's right.
Is the name, is that correct? Okay, and that's Tierney, TIERNEY, at bentech.com. So that would give 2 connection points for those of you out there that may have an interest in either the possibility of knowing more about the space, or if you're quietly at home with your startup and nobody else knows about you yet, and you'd like to get out there and collaborate with some other folks or let other people know that you exist, you'd want to contact Kelly, and maybe she could get you to participate in the 50 Startups program at the blog. Is that correct?
That's right. Well, and it's worth mentioning we also have a co-working space in Sisters called Sisters Tech, and we just opened up Redmond Tech as well. And so we're trying to replicate this model in other communities.
Well, that's great. That's great. And that, and one of the things that you shared with me that I don't want to brush by lightly, James, is that you have had your model is working so effectively that you have had folks from larger market areas come to you to ask you how you guys are doing, what you're doing, how you're able to work with so many different clusters.
Mm-hmm.
That must be really, really fun and really invigorating to be in part of such a large pool, if you will.
It is, and in fact, we were able to. The city of Bend even recognized that, and we were awarded $50,000 recently to hire someone. The role is actually called a key industry coordinator, and it's someone who can help facilitate the activities of the individual industry clusters. And so that's an example of how, by working together rather than trying to compete with one another, we were able to come up with a way of leveraging available money to provide for a resource that we could all leverage to basically help us with events and with membership programs and other activities. And that person is reporting up through EGCO.
And that's part of that Oregon Startup Infrastructure Bill? Is that what you're referencing?
No, this was just money that the city of Bend had set aside to help support industry clusters in an economic development effort. And it was about, I think, a year ago that we started the application process, and it was just awarded literally a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, great. And tell me about this Oregon's.
Yeah, there was an infrastructure bill, yes. And so the state of Oregon, like many other states, has a fund that is allocated to support entrepreneurship. And in this case, I think it was $250,000, and I think it ended up being quite a bit less than that this year. But what they do is they fund accelerator programs that in turn will help fund startups. And an accelerator is a kind of an educational program that helps a company go from concept to launch.
Okay, yeah, it says here that there's incubators, accelerators, and angel conference.
Yes.
And the angel conference, that's money, right?
Correct.
Nice.
Yeah, and Bend Venture Conference is probably the best example of an angel conference.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about that, because you also have a conference coming up. But first, why don't you tell us about the Bend Venture Conference, so that
sure
we know what that does and how people make their presentation, and because I think there's a number of us that have seen that at the Tower Theater that the Bend Venture Conference is going to be here, but nobody really knows exactly what they're doing and who qualifies.
Yep. Well, it's been growing every year. It's the largest venture conference in the Northwest, certainly in Oregon. And
larger than Seattle?
Yep.
Wow.
It's the biggest. And last year they awarded over $1 million to startups. And so those startups generally, the ones that win, generally have pretty good market traction, meaning they're profitable, they're showing consistent growth, or they have some patented technology that makes them very attractive. There's also a concept stage pitch, which is where Ben Broadband will award $10,000 to a company that is pre-revenue. And so there you can go there with an idea or some business that you've just recently started, and you might be able to win that award.
Well, that's great. And these people aren't necessarily just exclusively from Bend that come to this conference.
Oh, no.
Is that correct?
No, that's right. They're from all over.
I see. And then you have sort of the, I one of the things that I sort of appreciate about the whole entrepreneurial community, if you will, is that there's sort of a desire to resist structure in a collaborative way, so that it creates more opportunities to create. So you have created the unconference.
That's right.
I guess so. That's an answer to the venture conference. It's a little less structured.
Correct. We have that event. It'll be on the 15th of October, and everyone is welcome. It's open to the public. It's free to attend. It'll be at our co-working space at 1001 Southwest MK. And the format is where we have a whiteboard, and there are time slots, and anyone can go and put their pitch idea up on the board for a time slot, and they can pitch to the attendees, the people who are there in the audience, and then the audience will vote for a winner, and the winner will actually go on to the Bend Venture Conference, where they can win that $10,000 concept stage award. So it's a lot of fun.
So these are the folks that are, maybe way less structured. I think the term that you used previously was that most of the people at the venture conference have traction.
Yes.
And these would be people prior to having any traction. Is that correct?
That's usually correct, yeah. That's right.
This is great. This is going to take a whole new vocabulary for me to be able to talk with you, but I'm having a great time with it. Today we're here with James Gentis of Bentech, and he's sharing with us some insights into the entrepreneurial community. And when we come back after the break, he'll be able to share with us, the importance and why it's important to our community, and maybe give some examples of of some of the different technologies and things that are happening, so that people will realize that when we talk about tech, and when we talk about venture capital, and when we talk about startups, these are real applicable businesses that touch a number of different topics. The term that James uses is clusters, but there's a biotech component, there's a recreation component, there's a drone component. It's not just a bunch of geeks that are working in the cloud online and nobody knows what the heck they're doing or talking about. These are real world issues. So when we come back after the break, we'll talk about that. You're at Talk Real Estate with Fred Johnson, and we'll talk to you after the break. Welcome back to Talk Real Estate with Fred Johnson. Wow. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I turned off my mic. Let's make sure that James is still with us. James, you still here?
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah.
There you are. All right. As long as there's a little indecision. I didn't get the bumper music there. That was pretty wild. Well, anyway, what we were talking about is BenTech, and how there's a number of different businesses and entities that are looking at the community, that are considering coming to Bend. And maybe there's sort of two entities here, and maybe, James, you might be able to put a little face on this so that people understand that there's individuals that are considering relocating their family and coming to Bend for the quality of life and all of that. And of course, to be able to have a facility such as BenTech, where they'll be able to, interact with others that are in their industry and in their mindset. And then there's also business entities that are considering relocating to the area. Is that correct? Is that a fair?
That's right. Yep.
So what sort of frequency would you say, just for my own thought? I don't know if this is a figure that you can give me, but what kind of numbers are we talking about? Are we talking about you receiving a phone call a week or a phone call a month? How does that look?
Well, it's more email than phone calls, but yes.
Oh, that's right. I'm an old guy. Sorry.
Yeah, I'd say once a week, easily. I'll have someone saying, "Hey, I'm coming to town. We either just moved here or we're looking to move to Bend." And I'm sure, like many people in this community, I've talked to a lot of folks who they've gone to Austin and they've gone to other cities, Portland, and they've decided that Bend's the place that they're going to live. And so it's slowed down a little in the summer, but generally it's about one a week. And they all fit a very similar demographic. They're generally in their kind of mid 30s to mid 40s, and they've got a family, or they're about to have a family, and they're moving here from one of those kind of metropolitan areas in the Northwest or elsewhere on the West Coast.
I think that's one of the things with a lot of things in business these days, where, it used to be fairly easy, like, back in the days when Bend had a sawmill and we were producing a product, and if they decided to, add a new warehouse that was going to generate 20 employees, you knew what it was going to take. They manufactured the product here in town and then sold it. And there was really a direct correlation between the effort and reward, if you will, or the effort and employment. And where in some of these tech industries, it goes really globally, and it's really hard because there's not a brick and mortar component. It's really hard to kind of quantify, who's out there, who's doing what. And the beauty of having a facility like BenTech sort of at least gives everybody a home base to come and interact. Am I getting?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, the thing with entrepreneurship is that most jobs in this country come from new businesses. It's not small businesses, it's new ones. So if we can create more new businesses, we will inherently create more jobs here locally. Even though they may sell their products online or globally, or even if it's just software as a service being sold, they're going to create jobs. And many companies that have been in our co-working space are recently getting funded. Like Lead Method is a software company that just received a $100,000 investment from the Cascade. I just blanked on
that's
Julie
okay.
Harrelson.
And Lead Method, they deal with large scale distribution. Is that correct?
Yeah, they sell software to distribution companies to help them automate their sales process. And so by receiving that venture capital now, that I'm sure they're going to use that money to hire people locally or remotely, but still build their business in Bend.
Well, let's talk about another one that's maybe a little easier for someone to get their head around. The golf board. Everybody's seen that a little bit in the newspaper, and that too is a local startup that's creating a golf court or golf cart that's a little bit like riding a skateboard.
That's right. Yeah, they're in our space. In fact, you see them riding the golf boards around in our in our co-working space. And right, that's a great example of a company that's right now selling their products nationally, at least I believe globally as well. And as they continue to build that business, it's certainly going to generate jobs here.
That just looks like so darn much fun. I see those, and I want one, even if I'm not playing golf. And then another company that's there that I think is pretty intriguing, and that's Fire What is there?
That's right. And yes, San Lanier, and they've created a really innovative product to help with firefighting.
That's what I'm to understand is that there's a component where they basically get to overlay the GIS or the mapping feature along with the National Association of Weather Atmospheric feed, so that they have both the weather and the topography of the land in real time for firefighters and that to deploy equipment and that. I mean, it's really, really exciting. It's going to save lives and save an awful lot of money for firefighters and the wildfires and all of that.
Yep.
Maybe you can help me a little bit. You had mentioned a company called Pulse Light. And then right after you had mentioned their company, you mentioned crowdfunding. What is crowdfunding? Right. How does that work?
Yeah, they ran a crowdfunding campaign last year, and the rationale is that if you try to go to a bank and get money for your business, your startup, they won't give it to you.
Sure.
Right? And then if you go to a venture capitalist, they're probably going to want to see a lot of traction. So crowdfunding allows you to go online and raise money from individuals, anyone who's willing to support your cause or your business idea. And they were able to raise $80,000 through that and fund the growth of their initial product offering. And now that they've launched that, now they're on to their next product offering. So it was very successful for them.
Well, that's great, and also I'm to understand that I believe that you shared with me there's something called the Jobs Act that is helping that venture capital find its way to some of these startups a little easier than it was previously.
That's right. Today you have to be an accredited investor in order to take equity in startups, whereas the Jobs Act is not passed quite yet. There is something in Oregon that's similar to it that has passed in January, and that allows any individual to take equity in a startup. And so that's going to transform the nature of how these startups get funded, because now anyone can be an investor, whereas today it's primarily just venture capitalists who can invest.
Well, James, I want to thank you for coming and visiting with us today and sharing with us. And I hope that those of you that are listening out there today can really appreciate how diverse and how many people are impacting, our economy here in Bend, and appreciate the fact that hopefully it will be much more diverse and thereby be much more recession resistant. And we're gonna live in a wonderful area. And you may have noted too that all of these are ecologically sound. They leave a small carbon footprint. We're not talking about creating a coal burning plant that manufactures widgets and sends them all over the world. So I'm really, really excited to have James with us today. For those of you again that have a startup at home and want to share, please don't forget to email Kelly's blog at kelly@bentech.com. And, of course, you can always contact me anytime you would like at fred@dukewarner.com. If you have any questions, if you would like to get in touch with James, or you would have any topics or things of interest that you would like to hear discussed in a future show, we'd be more than glad to get to that information. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to us today, James?
I don't think so. I just want to say thanks, Fred, and I appreciate your interest in this topic. We think that this is just the beginning. There's going to be a lot of growth around this very soon.
Well, I'm really excited to have you here, and thank you so much for coming in and sharing it with us. And to those of you out there, we'll see you next week, and thank you so much for tuning in.